On today's episode of Show You the Business, we're talking to George Naef, a sole proprietor and investor in real estate, about house hacking, how real estate creates cash flow, and what are the risks around real estate. George is an open book in this interview, and you don't want to miss it. I'm Joanne Leasure, the Profit Coach, a Grant Cardone licensee, and your host. So let's get to it. Why don't we just get started? So,
Yep.
George Naef. Now, we met through networking, and we have nice business relationship. So, I wanted to bring you on this podcast to just talk about some things that you do. And one of the things that I know you do is real estate. So, tell me about what you do in real estate.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on, Joanna. It's really a pleasure. I got to know both you and George last year, and I got to say, you guys are awesome. Thank you for, always meeting for coffee over in Wind Gap. We appreciate it. And now I get to see George every Thursday, which is also great.
Awesome.
So, yeah. But yeah, I got into real estate about I didn't really jump into it. I jumped into 2019, but I did a lot of research. So I'd say about 2017 was when I really started getting into making money. I was in the telecom industry at the time. I was managing a store, an AT&T location, and I started making, pretty decent money there. I was managing the location. And so one of the first things that I was looking at is, I was budgeting for, at the time, my fiance and I's wedding. We're married now, so it went through. Which is a good thing. I was like, man, if I can just get rid of this pesky rents, we could save so much more money. How do I do that? And I would always just kind of browsing YouTube, looking at a couple of different things, and I came upon someone named Graham Stephan. He liked to talk about real estate investing, and so for me, it was cool because he was, not really he was a no pressure guy. He was talking about it, and that kind of started at least igniting the first thought of me going down the real estate rabbit hole. And so for about 2 years, I really, was getting into figuring out what could happen in real estate and how much it could benefit myself and my family, especially because, with inflation rising and everything like that, it's like it gets really, really, difficult. So we ended up, I ended up doing about 2 years of research. My wife had no idea at the time because I didn't want to go and say something and be like, hey, let's go ahead and do this without having it being thought out. And honestly, we were all worried about getting married at the time and figuring out that kind of stuff. So we were like, okay, I could easily take it slow and learn about it. And I ended up, talking to her about it a little after we got married in 2018. She was a little hesitant at first, but when I kind of showed her, we had some of the same goals of she may want to stay at home in the future when we have kids and stuff like that. So because of those goals, we ended up going into real estate. I went on biggerpockets.com. I looked up a realtor there because at the time I really wasn't networking too much because I was in the store all the time, managing the store until about 7 p.m. And Bigger Pockets was a great place for me to kind of go on and look at realtors who understand about real estate investing, because not all realtors do that. Right. So we connected with them, looked at a bunch of properties, and ran my numbers and found a great place in 2019. We weren't coming, we weren't living for free or anything like that in the beginning, but the cost of living with, because when you take real estate into account, you take the income you get in minus any expenses that you are projecting. When you're looking at that, you get your net, what you feel like your projection of your net operating income would end up being, and take it out to that. And basically we were coming out of pocket about $300 a month. And then when interest rates took a dive, we ended up refinancing, and now I can say, hey, we're doing a lot better now, and doing a lot of good things. So yeah, that's my long-winded answer about into real estate. So
Awesome. Well, as you know, my mentor is Grant Cardone, and he is seriously into real estate. One of the things he said recently was that the game is going to change. And the way it's changing is that it's kind of leaning more towards that investor buying, as opposed to having the regular family, go in and
Mm,
looking for things. So he says that what that means is that people aren't going to necessarily be that interested in the things that normally they were interested in when buying a house. Like, if a realtor gave me some information on what needs to be fixed, it's usually, spruce up the kitchen and spruce up the bathroom. And what's your take on what 2023 in the future has in store?
Well, for those that are new investors, I say 2023 is a great time to kind of take out the book and learn it. So
Mm,
I always say when you get into any kind of investment, you want to make sure you take the time to learn and understand what you're investing in. You don't just want to jump into it willy-nilly.
mm,
There are always deals to be had in any type of market. However,
mhm,
your more experienced investors, because they've been doing it for so long, are usually going to find those deals first. And so again, learning the numbers and understanding it and having someone that's in your corner, whether it's a good realtor that you know of and trust, or doing some research on how the numbers work, will really get you started into that. So there are good deals to be found in every market. And one of the cool things about real estate is it's a very inefficient market. You can always kind of pick up inefficiencies in the market.
mm,
It's not like other markets where you can kind of see everything going on and the prices are constantly moving. The real estate market's based off of 90-day data that's kind of on a back trend. And so what's going on right now, if you kind of get into it and learn it, it's a great time to soak it up. And markets change, because there could be another time where there could be a better investor sentiment for maybe people just starting off, because I know 2019 was a very, looking back on it now, maybe you didn't think about it at the time. And usually when you start investing in real estate, it doesn't see, you're never going to get whatever is considered a unicorn or perfect deal for the most part.
right.
But getting into it is a really good thing. And house hacking provides something very unique, which is what I'm doing. We're living in one end,
Mm,
and we're renting out the other.
mm,
Um, that's what we're doing. And then on the internet, that's called house hacking. And what what we do is there's a lot of opportunity costs in there. So your opportunity cost is what you're paying for rent, right? So even if
right.
you don't find that slam dunk deal, you can still, if you want to, have that property for a long time, build equity in the property. Usually they say it takes about 5 to 7 years to really start building up equity. So you have to put in a longer term mindset when you're doing something like that, as
Right.
opposed to other types of real estate investing like flipping or something like that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So house hacking, I've never heard of that.
Yep.
So that's awesome. It seems as though that's probably been around for a long time, because it's not, the concept of living in the house that you're renting out. So are you renting out a room, an apartment? What are you doing?
Yeah. So yeah, house hacking is definitely not, the name is new, but the concept, you're right, is completely not. They just kind of come up with whatever kind of internet term that they're looking for, and that's kind of the
Yeah.
name, house hacking. But this used to be single family home at one point, and at one point it got converted to upstairs downstairs units. So we have an upstairs unit, 2 bedroom, and then we live in the 1 bedroom unit downstairs.
Got
And
it.
that's how we're working that. And then our next goal is to move out and get an actual primary residence, because that's one of the contingencies my wife gave me. So, I got a happy wife, happy life, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so we're saving up a down payment, which we should have by August this year with the way that we're planning things. And
Mhm.
then we're going to rent out where we're living now, and then that should cash flow positive, because we're pretty much about to be cash flowing positive anyway. So this, when this unit gets rented out, that will give the positive cash flow.
Wow.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a very well thought out plan. And then obviously it's actually working. Have you found that there were any hiccups in the process of doing this plan, implementing this plan out?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that could have went wrong for sure. And I mean, if you don't know how to look at a property, I would always say maybe pay a contractor or something to walk through the property with you. That
Mhm.
maybe that contractor is in the same position you are. Maybe the contractor has worked on a has worked in contracting for a while, but just wanted to get started on their business and needed some income, right? So kind of find the person that's going to grow you, because they always say like either you outgrow your contractor, contractor outgrows you eventually when it comes
Oh,
to that kind of space. So
yeah.
find, do your due diligence, find someone who's willing to look for the properties with you, that understands that, hey, this could go wrong, and here's what the end cost could end up being. Because if you started investing, let's just say in 2020, and bought the house, and all of a sudden all those material costs went up, when your projections are completely thrown out of whack with that
Wow.
kind of stuff too. So you just got to make sure you do your due diligence. And right now, so it's a tough time. It's a time of still high inflation, right? We're
Right.
still, what we kind of peaked in June, but we're still having pretty high inflation. And right now the market, um, it's not it's definitely not for the faint of heart, if
Yeah.
you will. So that's why I say right now is a really, really great time to learn and save and do it right, because that way when the market ends up turning, the patience that you would have is going to have that come out in a positive direction. it took
Absolutely.
it took me 2 years to, it may take you one, it may take you three, but just make sure you actually understand it. So
Absolutely. And speaking of understanding, can you explain a little bit, as if no one knows anything,
mhm.
about inflation and what it does to the market, especially at this time? What is it doing to us?
Yeah, so inflation, for those that don't understand what inflation is let's just say I want to buy this loaf of bread, and this loaf of bread cost me $5. All of a sudden, in a year from today, now that loaf of bread costs me six. So if I had, the same $5 in the account, that spending, it costs me more money to spend things on those goods than it did for me last year. So that's what inflation means. And if you have your money just kind of sitting in a bank, inflation is eroding that away
Mm,
over time. So that's why people invest, is not only some people invest just to keep up with inflation. Other people invest to outpace inflation and make extra money on that. And figuring out what types of investments you want to do is key with that. But in real estate has a long-term track record of going up, at least with inflation, and then having the cash flows on top of that, helping out as well. So you get kind of a couple things, and then you get the appreciation of the property,
mhm.
and then you get the cash flows in there. I always, when I'm doing my property analysis, I just underwrite with the cash flow of the property, because that's the only thing I can really end up projecting, and what the market rate is for that. What happens to the real estate market in the short term, to me, doesn't matter as much, because if I'm holding that real estate for a very long period of time, um, I could speculate all day on what that price may or may not be. But if it cash flows properly for me, I'm happy with it. So that's kind of my personal investing strategy.
Awesome,
Yep.
awesome. Now, real estate, it seemed like it was selling like hotcakes, so to speak, in the
Yep.
2022. And people are saying, it's calming down, things are changing. What do you see in the future? Do you see a crash? Do you see a bubble bursting? What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, from all the reading that I've done, I'm always a little hesitant to say like, hey, this is definitely going to happen. But
Mhm,
off the reading that I
mhm,
have, this is what could happen.
mhm,
What we've seen is in the West Coast, a lot of property devaluation out there. I'm not an expert in those markets by any means. I really invest here in the Lehigh Valley, and with the Lehigh Valley, from what I've seen, I haven't seen too much of and even in the East Coast too, there hasn't been as much of a downward spiral in value. And there's a couple things that could be lending to that. Big thing is a lot of people are moving from New York and New Jersey into the Lehigh Valley, and so
mhm,
that's been continuing to prop up the valley as well. And with work from home becoming more of a commonplace thing too, there's a lot of people that a place in Lehigh Valley, which may be more expensive to the people living there, to people in New York and New Jersey, it's a steal. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest things, propping it up. Um, Now, that's not to say that there couldn't be a small crash that ends up happening. It absolutely could be. I mean, the biggest thing that I've seen is I've seen a lot of articles saying, hey, this is not, 2008
Hmm.
instead, but there could be a slight inflection in the overall real estate market. And it's all going to depend on your market. So what's really, really important is that you get a good realtor on your side that's looking at the market every day, that knows that specific geographical area of real estate. So that
Right.
way, that, you have the confidence to do that. And, that's all obviously a personal choice, and someone you're going to have to do your own due diligence on as well. So.
Right, right. So it sounds like in order to do this, you need to have a nice partnership with a really good realtor, someone who's been in the game for a long time and understands the landscape.
Exactly. I mean, it's
Mhm.
all about building a team of people behind, and that's exactly what networking is all about too. You find people that you want to be on your team, that are going to be in your corner because they want to see you succeed. Because if you succeed, then you're going to buy another property in the future, and then they might come back to you and they want to see you succeed too.
Right.
So it's all about creating those kind of win-win situations with people.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So tell me, and we kind of alluded to this in the beginning of our conversation, but tell me, how does real estate create cash flow? Let's break it
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, so real estate creates cash flow in a bunch of different ways, and it depends on what specific type of real estate you want to.
Mm,
There are some people that go in self-storage, and they have people paying for the self-storage pods and things. Other
mhm,
people that maybe you're renting out a single-family home, sometimes they'll pay for the single-family home, and they'll charge a parking fee for their garage, so those will
mm,
create some cash flow. Other people will rent out parking spaces in the parking lot back there, in addition to, so that'll create some extra cash flow. Others may use the laundry services for cash. There's so many different ways you can create cash flow, but the
mm,
one thing that you don't want to do is kill your cash flow. And the biggest thing is figuring out what your costs are. So what's typical maintenance costs on a property
right.
in that area? What do you project when you're doing your analysis with your contractor? What do you project you're going to see? And you should put some, asterisks on what their projections are. You might want to give yourself a buffer of maybe 20-30%, because things will come up that were
Mhm,
unexpected. And
mhm,
you want to obviously play it safe with the numbers, but maybe you have a roof that's really, really bad that you thought was good, and
mhm.
maybe because they didn't get a drone on there and they didn't see exactly where the roof was. Now they're like, oh, well, now the ceiling's leaking and now I'm out 10 grand. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you have to kind of build that in. And there's two ways you could do that. The first is maintenance,
Okay.
which is, regular old, hey, am I paying for lawn care? What's it going to take to fix a pipe or something like that? And then there's other things that are called capital expenditures. That's when you're ripping out stuff and replacing them. That would be a new roof. That would be, a sink, whatever, water heater, whatever that thing is. Then you're actually ripping it out. Those are called capital expenditures. Then you also want to
Right.
consider vacancy. While you have renters that stay, there are ones that are vacant, and you want to know what the typical numbers of the vacancy may be. Then obviously you have your taxes, your insurance, and all the other things, and those can really eat up your cash flow. You're like, oh man, I may be making like 70 grand a year from all these properties, but when you really look at it, maybe you're only making 10. And
Right.
then when you're looking at that compared to the property, that gives you something called a cap rate. That it's just a percentage of your net operating income divided by the initial investment that you make for the property. So
Right. Wow. Wow. Yeah, a lot of people do not take that in consideration. And I guess that's what you guys call running the numbers when you're first purchasing the property, correct?
absolutely, you got to run the numbers, and you got to understand, your rates of return, because if you don't, it's really gonna trip you up,
Right.
for sure.
Right. Right. Right.
And that
Are, okay, keep going.
no,
Sorry.
no, no, go ahead, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, are there any other real estate risks in doing all of this?
Oh,
Anything
absolutely.
additional? Go ahead.
Yeah,
Tell
yeah.
us.
I'm so obviously, you could do all the due diligence in the world, and all of a sudden you get an especially with an older property, which Lehigh Valley is definitely full of older properties.
Yeah.
You all of a sudden, if you're starting to tear out a wall or something, there's a big risk to that. Also, depending on what market that you're in, your self-storage has a different set of risks versus your hotels versus your residential. One of the biggest things that have probably gone down is luxury real estate, because when or vacation rentals, because if you buy a vacation rental and it's obviously rented out all the time, it's great. But when economic times are hard and people can't afford things, the first thing that they're going to stop doing is the vacation rental. So
Mm.
you see in those markets, they have a lot higher highs and a lot lower lows because of that. And you have to be okay with that. And also, I would caution that definitely have some reserves in place, because there may be years where the numbers that you thought were going to look great haven't really looked so good, and you're going to have to come out of pocket with that. So having reserves, just like it's a business. You're running a business, so you got to run it like a business.
Right, right. That's excellent advice. I love it. I love it. Well, George, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with us. We learned
Yeah,
so much, and we will definitely hope that our audience, really takes to listening to exactly what you're talking about as far as the risks, being reserved, studying, looking at the market. I love it. One more question I have to ask, because we are
sure.
actually in different real estate markets, but we're in the same state.
Yep.
So, I remember when me and my husband, George, when me and my husband had gotten together, we both had houses, one in Lehigh Valley and then one in the Poconos. And the
Mhm.
Poconos is I know it's a different, it's a different animal, but
Absolutely.
at the same time, we're in pretty good driving distance from Lehigh Valley. So for those people who want to invest and they may see that it might be a little cheaper to invest in the Poconos, what should they look out for being in that different market?
Yeah, that kind of goes back to that whole vacation things. If we're looking at Poconos, there's a lot of people that come from New York and spend a weekend at a place there, or they're going up to ski in the summer, or they're going to, Camelback and, stuff like that. And so they say ski in the summer. I meant ski in the winter. Sorry.
I gotcha.
I was like, wait, what did I just say?
Sometimes people want to ski in the summer.
Yeah,
Shoot.
yeah, yeah. Who knows if there's a will, there's a way. But yeah, yeah, but that those are those unique vacation, risks that you should take when you're looking in the Poconos, and then kind of figuring out what pockets of the area maybe don't have those kind of risks and are more for having a community and building up, and maybe people that want to work in those specific areas. Maybe they're working at the theme parks, they're working at the gambling,
Mm,
whatever that may be. Our property is very close to a hospital, and so my ideal renter would be someone with quite a bit of money, and that can literally go 5 minutes up the road to one of the hospitals over here in the
right.
valley. And so your specific area, and a lot of people did that with traveling nurses too. I've seen other investors say, hey, traveling nurses are during the pandemic, it was a really, really big thing. They had excess amounts of cash and they were just doing some short-term rentals there, so they took advantage of that little that market as well. So there's all sorts of little things in real estate that you can really do. You kind of develop your own niche too, which is really, really great. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks for talking to us, George.
yeah.
And, we're pretty much over and out, but I want to definitely, I mentioned Grant Cardone, and I always like to give the little hand, make it a 10X day.
Yeah, 10x. I know that's great. Yep, absolutely. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah, of course, Joanne, no problem.
Well, this concludes our episode of Show You the Business, where we speak to business owners, learn how their business works, and get their advice on how we can make more. I'm Joanne Leasure, your host. I'm also the Profit Coach and a Grant Cardone licensee. You can catch George Naef at 484-560-0827, or you can reach out to him via email at gc.restful.rentals@gmail.com. We'll even have that information in the show notes. All right, everybody. We love to say, make it a 10X day and be great.